Today we're going to be covering the client read-only page. We do have a lot to cover in terms of setup and making sure that you have all of the fields that you're going to need. So we won't have as much time to cover off any questions at the end, but I will make sure we have at least 10 minutes or so for any questions. My name is Lexi. I cover customer success and support at Preca. I've been with the system within the Salesforce ecosystem for 3 years, and with the Preca coming up on 2 years now. So for the agenda today, we're going to explore the client read-only page and not only find out how to set it up, how to use it, how to troubleshoot, and keep your clients up to date. And I do want this to be an interactive session, so please feel free to message in the chat if you have any questions, and I'll try to address them as I'm going through the demo today. Our main objectives to cover off will be setting up the Force.com site, also branding the page. So if you have your logo or your customer logo that you want to add, getting that on the page, configuring your page settings and your page layouts so that you can add or remove and manage the information that's being shared. I do want to note that this feature is only available to customers using Enterprise Edition or higher, so this is not available in the Professional Edition. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the demo. All right, so the first thing you'll need to configure is your Force.com site. And to do so, you will need your domain enabled within your org. So I don't have anything set up in this demo org. I'm going to be starting it from scratch so that we can walk through all of the steps. Most of the time, this portion of the setup will be completed for you. But if you're in a new org, you may want to keep a similar naming convention for your company. But you can only have one Salesforce site domain with that name. So if you already have an org that is using your company's name, you might have to enter a variation here. So I will do demo read only and check to see if this is available, which it is available. So I will accept the terms and conditions and register the Salesforce site domain. Okay, so a community is already available to set up, but we're going to need to create a new, sorry about that. We're going to need to create a new Force.com site. Thought my focus was on. All right. I will try to keep the naming convention similar throughout the demo today, but not only is the client read-only page referred to as client, but you might notice in some of our training materials, it is referred to as the customer read-only page as well. Okay. So next we'll need to confirm the site contact. I'm going to leave this as it is and have the default web address as read only as well. Want to make sure your site is active. And then for your active site homepage, you'll need to select the client read only page. So I'll drag this little pop-out box onto the screen. That way you can see that we'll need the customer read only site page here. You can keep the inactive site as is, and the remaining settings can be left. You can modify like the cookies for the site, but it's not required. So the recommended settings are fine here. All right, so next, after we save our site here, when it loads, we are going to give our guest site user access to the system. Okay, let's see if this already saved. Okay, so it's saved here. I'm going to edit my site. I'm going to click into my site. So notice if you edit the site, that'll manage the settings, but if you click on the hyperlink for the name, that'll open up the site details. So after we have our site details opened up here, we're going to go to our public access settings. This is going to take us to the guest site user for this page. And then we are going to view users. Okay, now we are going to click into the client read-only guest site user and make sure that the user has a mission control license. So I'm on the guest site user. I'm going to scroll down to the manage package and assign a license. All right, so now that I have that license, I don't know why it took me to that page. Just gonna refresh and make sure that's saved. All right, so I have my license assigned. The next thing is I'll need to add my permission sets. I can either do so from here and click edit assignments, or I can go to the permission set assignments at the bottom of the display. And we've already created the customer read-only permission set. So you just have to add that to the guest site user. All right, so now our guest site user has the access that they'll need within mission control, but we will need to also make sure that our sharing rules are set up within our org to allow access to the record within Salesforce. So we just set up access to the objects and fields, but now we need to set up access to the records. Okay, so the first object I'm going to go to is the project object. And you can see for external access, I have my default set to private. So I'm going to create a new sharing rule. Name this read-only page. And then we're going to grant the guest site user access based on criteria. So the criteria that I want here is I want to make sure that the project is not archived. So if the archived field on the project equals false, then I want to share with the guest site user read-only access. Okay, so this is my criteria, and this is going to grant access to the guest site user. All right, the next page that I will need to add a sharing rule to, or the next object, will be the checklist item object. And we're going to do a similar, create a new sharing rule. And I'm going to keep the same naming convention here as well. We're going to grant the guest site user access based on criteria. And this time we're going to base the criteria on the exclude from client page field on the checklist item object. Okay, so this field, we'll get into making sure that this field is on your page layouts and what it does for the client read-only page in a little bit. So we want to make sure that this field equals false as well. And if that field is false, then the client read-only guest site user will have read-only access. All right, next object will be the change request object. and we're going to grant guest user access based on the same field that the exclude from client page equals false. Next object will be the issue object. Create a new sharing rule. And same as before, we're going to make sure that the exclude from client page, equals false. Same as before, read-only access to the guest site user. And then the last object that we'll need to create a sharing rule for is the dependency object. And same as before, actually not same as before, for the dependency object, we'll want to make sure that the created by ID is not equal to null. So we're just going to leave this value blank here. All right. I just want to double check that I don't have to enter null right in that field. Instead of leaving it blank so that no errors come up. If we do have errors, I will try to also troubleshoot while we are on the webinar so that you can also take a look at, if things come up, how you can resolve them with the client read-only page. It can get a little sticky. There's so many settings that need to be set up. Okay. So on the dependency, okay, so on the dependency, it is not equal to period. All right. So the next thing we'll need to do is select the force.com site within the mission control console. And I'm going to just keep my settings up open because we're not done yet in regards to the settings. Okay, so we'll just need to go to the control pad. And under the customer read-only page, we'll need to select the site that we just created, and that would be the read-only site here. So that we've created this during the site setup. All right, so before we go to our project, I want to take a look at the page layouts for the objects that are related to this so that we can make sure that when viewing the client read-only page, if I want to manage or exclude certain things from the page, that I can do so. So in addition to the page layout and adding the client read-only page fields, there's also field sets on a few of the objects. So that would be the project, milestone, action, checklist item, and time log. And that's going to control what fields are displayed on the project overview. So under the project Okay, so not the project, that would be the milestone and action. Okay, so I'll go to the field sets for the other objects. The next thing I want to do is manage my page layout and make sure that my client read-only page fields are on the layout. I believe I may have already set this section up, but I just want to make sure. Okay, so I have a client read-only page settings section on my project layout. That will include my project ID, as well as the URL link that we just created for the site. And then you also have the option to exclude some of the tabs within the client read-only page. So you want to make sure that those are on your page as well. Okay, the next object I'm going to go to is the milestone. And I'm pretty sure this field is on the layout, but just to double check, there is a field called exclude from client read-only page, and that is on my page layout. And again, that field is also on the action, time log, checklist item, risk, issue, and change request objects. So if there is a record that you don't want included on the client page, you can mark that field true on that record. Next thing we'll do is go to our field sets. And in the field sets, there's a read-only page that will allow you to manage what fields are shown on the project overview tab, as well as the time log tab within the client read-only page. Okay. So you can just, if you have any custom fields that, or any fields that you don't want the client to see, you can manage that within the field set here. Okay, two more things. When you are viewing the client read-only page, you can also manage if your logo and if your client logo is displayed on the client read-only page. Now, to add a logo, you'll need to go over into Salesforce Classic and navigate to your Documents object, which is only available in Salesforce Classic. And want to make sure you add your icon that you would like to add for your customer or for yourself. So you'll want to make sure that the logo is uploaded. And if you have a customer logo that's uploaded, you'll need to copy the link to the image, copy image address. And if you want to be extra sure that image address is correct, you can open the image in a new tab. And this link right here is the link that you'll need to populate in the logo URL field on your project. Okay, so now we have our logo. I'm going to make sure that in my Gantt chart settings, my logo is selected, which it already is. And be sure to save within the Gantt settings. And then I can go ahead and navigate to a project. And add my customer logo as well. I'm just going to edit the record detail. And it looks like I've already populated that logo URL here. Okay, so I'm going to double check and make sure my client read-only page tabs are enabled, which they are not. So I want to make sure I include all of those. And then save. And as you can see, our URL has already been populated on our project detail. And then the external project ID has been added to the URL. So let's go ahead and click this. And boom, our client read-only page is active. All right. So here is the overview tab. The client won't be able to click into any of this. This is only going to be read-only. So we get a view of our project breakdown, milestones, actions, and related checklist items. Again, if a record is marked as exclude from client page, it won't be viewable from the overview or any of the other tabs on the client read-only page. All right, next we have the Gantt chart. And again, just as before, the user won't be able to make any changes. They won't get any of the drag and drop functionality within the Gantt chart. They'll just get a read-only view of the project. You can see the dependencies are shown as well, project and record. If you have any custom headers set in your Gantt chart settings, those will be displayed here as well, same as your Kanban. If you have your whiteboard settings managed, that will also be what's shown here. So if you have like custom sorting and things like that, that is what is shown in the project overview as well. I'm sorry, in the client read-only page as well. Okay, so this is our Kanban. The time logs tab. So it's just going to give a summary of the time logs associated to this project. Same for your risks. Issue log will be available as well. And then your change requests. I don't have any change requests on this project, so it's not going to show any. And then as you can see, the image has been uploaded for the business logo as well as our customer logo. All right, does anyone have any questions so far? All right, so I have a question. Is the guest user mission control license the same as project manager user mission control license? So yes, if you want to use the client read-only page, one of the licenses within your org will need to be allocated to the guest site user. Now there's only one site, so you'll only need one license assigned. But I will take you to the installed package just so you can see that it does take up one of the available licenses within the package. All right, so the guest site user won't show here, but you can see I have one license assigned to myself, and then an additional license is used, and that is for the guest site user. So it is the same kind of license. What if a client has multiple projects? If a client has multiple projects, they will just have individual links for their projects. So this project has its own individual ID. If I navigate to a different project, that project will have its own ID as well. So a link to all of the projects will need to be provided for that client. And on this one, I don't have any of the checkboxes marked true. So you want to make sure you're displaying some tabs there. Any other questions regarding the client read-only page? Okay, you weren't able to see the install packages. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I was trying to show that the licenses, you can see that 2 licenses are used, but I only have 1 assigned to my user, just to show that one of the licenses are allocated to the guest site user. In regards to your project, each individual project will have its own ID. So when viewing that link, the ID that's added to the end of the link will be the project that's being viewed. So you won't be able to view multiple projects at one time. The client will just need a link, their link to the different projects. Any other questions? I thought it was going to take longer than it did, but it looks like we do have a full 30 minutes of open office hours. So if you have any questions unrelated to the client read-only page, I'd be more than happy to assist as much as I can here as well. What if you have hundreds of clients or projects? In that case, Robert, if you want to create a Salesforce report that contains this client overview page URL, and filter the criteria for the client, then you can send a report with the links that relate to the project for them. That way they have a report of all of their projects in one place, or all of their project links in one place. This is automatically updated, so you won't need to do any additional setup once your site is configured. If you want something that is more interactive or can be emailed or anything like that, you can set up Salesforce notifications, or you can use the weekly status report, project status report, which is something we'll be covering over in another Kosmo Campfire. If you want, sorry, they're cutting grass now. If you want to send out like a weekly status report, then I recommend using the project stakeholders and that'll send the weekly status report instead of the client read-only link. Yes, so the recording for today will be emailed to all of the attendees. It will also be available on our website under Kosmo's Campfires. I have one more question. When I enter the URL, why do I only see the header? Try doing a refresh, Robert. I had to go back to the project and make sure the tabs were visible. So you might need to refresh your screen after I did that. So as you can see, all of our previous Kosmo campfires are available on the website. All right. Sorry for the grass cutting. Yes, I can show how to add the logo to the customer read-only page. So there are two places on the read-only page. You have your logo here, and then your client logo over to the side. To upload your client logo, you'll just need your image URL. So to get to this, I went within my documents in Salesforce Classic, and I right-clicked and selected Open Image in a new tab. That brings me here, and that gives me the URL to copy. Once I have my URL, I go into the details on the project, and I put the URL within the logo URL field. So this is for your customer. If you want to upload your business logo, that can be found in your control pad. Under your Gantt chart settings. So once you select your logo here, that's going to display your logo on your client read-only page. No problem, Christina. All right, I have one more question. So anyone leaving the company and taking the URLs with can still see my project plans. So if a user has this URL link to your individual projects, this is a external link. So it can be accessed from anyone that has this URL link. If there's information that you don't want shared on your project, then I recommend hiding that from your client read-only page or excluding tasks that are confidential. Another thing that you can do if there is an issue with data, if you needed to change your read-only site to a different URL link, you would have to create a new force.com site. Otherwise, anywhere that a user has this link, they will be able to access. So, for example, if I was to send this link over in the chat, anyone should be able to click on this link as it's externally available. If you didn't want users to access this page and keep up-to-date information on the project, then I recommend using like the project status report, where they would actually need the PDF to the status report, which would need to be like saved and shared and so forth. All right. I'll just wait on here for a few more minutes in case anyone else has any other questions. One thing to note, Robert, if you do end up changing your force.com site, you'll need to reselect the site here in your control pad, as well as in your custom settings. So if you are in a sandbox and you already used your sites and you change the URL to a site that was already existing, you may get an error when you first navigate to your client read-only page. And that will be because the custom settings in the background will need to be updated as well. So say, for instance, we had a data breach. I didn't want this URL link to be available anymore, and I changed the link within Salesforce. Thank you, Liz. If I was to change this URL, I'll need to update this. So to do so, I'll go to the custom settings within setup and select the rates label. Okay. Once I'm in the rates label, you can edit. Sorry, you don't need to edit here. You'll need to edit on your rates. So you'll manage your rates. And you can see that the read-only site is populated here. If I change my URL within my site settings, I'll need to update it here as well. So I would just copy the new URL, edit here on my custom rate settings, and populate the URL here. After doing so from here, I'll need to go to my control pad and select the new site. And all right, so I'm going to stay on the call a few more minutes just in case anyone else has any other questions. If not, if you're checking out, thank you again for joining this Kosmo Campfire. If you have any ideas on other subjects that you would like to see, please feel free to let me know. I'll be more than happy to cover over more topics. And it's been great getting these done on the website as well. All right. I see that most of our participants are leaving the call. So we'll go ahead and wrap up this session. please feel free to reach out to us via the support link on the website or at support@aprika.com. I'll just get that resource link up. And if you have any further questions or concerns, please feel free to let us know. We'll be more than happy to help out. Thank you again for joining, everyone. Have a great day.